This is always big for us here at MSNBC, but it's big for the world. It has a global, perhaps, impact. How big is Global Citizen becoming compared to this time last year?
Well, fortunately, Mika, the movement itself has grown to have over 8 million members now.
Wow.
8 million people
That's
around
good.
the world taking action to end extreme poverty and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
If you see something's going on in the world and you don't say something about it, it is consent. You cannot turn your head away from the realities.
And if you feel you're sinking, I will jump right over into cold, cold water for you. And although time may take us into different places, I will still be patient with you. I hope you know I won't let go. I'll be your lifeline.
1 year ago, 193 member heads of state came together and agreed on a set of goals to ensure a sustainable future for generations to come.
The 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are a roadmap to the better world we all need, and we need to hold leaders accountable.
I'm going to talk about a global agenda. An agenda, I think, that has motivated all of you in this room, and there are a surprisingly large number of you. I wasn't expecting quite this large a crowd, frankly. An agenda, I think, of sustainability and responsibility that is much farther along than we had all suspected as recently as September 2015. What are we implementing? Well, we're implementing this global sustainable development agenda. It's first and foremost a global agenda, one that is truly universal. It affects all countries, all peoples, all the time. And there's never been a global agenda anywhere like that. And because it is so universal and because it is so global, it requires the engagement of all stakeholders. And this in itself is a challenge. Over the course of the last year, maybe 2 years, as we've been thinking about what this Sustainable Development Agenda should be, two things have become entirely clear. One, it is a vast agenda. It is essentially transforming the way society is put together. And that means it is beyond the capacity of any government, individually, or any set of governments collectively to implement. They cannot do it alone.
So this week, as a few of you may have noticed, world leaders are gathering in New York, no doubt to the delight of actual New Yorkers, for annual meetings on the great political, economic, and humanitarian questions of our time. Every year that I've been involved in this, the stakes feel higher and higher. This year, our gathering is set in the midst of one of the most significant global debates that we've seen in decades about foreign policy. It doesn't pit left against right, Democrat against Republican here in our country, liberal against conservative, or even urban against rural. Rather, the fault line that we've seen emerge is between those who would erect walls and those who would build bridges. In an age that is more fluid and fraught with complexity than ever before, we have to think hard about how we redefine our engagement and our leadership for the times we're living. We have to boldly defend the value of an open world.
We live in a world of 7 billion people with dramatic demographic imbalances, where inequalities are growing, where climate change is reshaping the land and the borders of human civilization. So it is up to us to build a new system for human mobility. Human mobility has always existed in human history. But today the challenge is of a different scale. Now, our new approach, especially on the external side of our work with partners, can flow into the new global compact we are shaping. It has to champion the new development paradigm enshrined in the Agenda 2030. And it must be a compact for partnership and for shared responsibility globally. You can count on us, on the European Union, to continue to work together for the success of this process and to finally move towards a global governance of human mobility.
I know it can be hard looking at today's headlines, literally today's headlines, and see business opportunity past the chaos. But it is there, and it is real.
Hello, global citizens. Bonjour à tous. Because of you, governments and businesses around the world have pledged almost $13 billion to the Global Fund. To end these epidemics and to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals, we must do more.
The actions taken today will have tremendous impact. Being a global citizen is so special to me.
We absolutely have to accomplish the Sustainable Development Goals because the stakes are too high for failure.
If not in conditions of peace and security, as the SDGs themselves point out.
The 71st UN General Assembly has opened its first plenary session, gathering delegates from 193 member states at the UN's New York headquarters. The decision-making body will be led by newly appointed President Peter Thompson until September 2017. They include achieving peace and security.
The government has pledged its commitment to supporting United Nations Sustainable Development Goals program. Vice President Yusuf Kala says Indonesia has implemented some of the SDG programs even before it was launched.
The way I am describing what happened last year is as follows. For the first time ever, the leaders of the world managed to come up with a plan for the future.
A state of emergency has been declared.
Aleppo ablaze once again under the heaviest bombardment in months.
It's also different because it's a universal agenda. If you look at the world through the Sustainable Development Goals, every country is a developing country. The new agenda, for the first time in our experience, explicitly links together development, human rights, and peace and security.
And yet, around the globe, we are seeing the same forces of global integration that have made us interdependent also expose deep fault lines in the existing international order. Indeed, our international order has been so successful that we take it as a given that great powers no longer fight world wars.
As President Obama has said, if you had to choose any moment in history in which to be born, not knowing where, not knowing what your race, gender, ethnicity, religion, or sexual orientation would be, you would choose today. Today's global challenges are so immense, so complex, that the ingenuity, the tools, and the resources required in the trillions of dollars are simply beyond the capacity of any single national government, organization, or actor alone.
There's quite a bit of information in the scripture from the lips of Jesus that describe different trends and events that all happen globally, recognized trends and events that all happen in one time frame, in one generation. That one day there's going to be one man who has a global government. Now, I don't mean every single nation will be dominated by him, but he will have a presence and he will have an influence, and in many cases, domination in the nations around the world. Revelation 13, verse 3, all the world marveled. All the world followed the beast. Verse 7, authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation. Again, he'll have an impact and an influence, at least, and a domination in many places as well. Verse 8, we find that word all again. All who dwell on the earth will worship him. Well, the stage is being set today. It's recognizable. The conditions for this to happen are recognizable today by the rapidly increasing integration of many areas of life in many nations. And the term that is most commonly used is the term globalization. It's a term that became popular in the mainstream in the 1980s. Paragraph B, now globalization is the process by which the peoples of the world in many different facets of life begin to function together as one single world society. But the part I want you to be struck by And the folks that are my age, I'm 60, it's far more obvious to us how unusual this globalization is today compared to 50 years ago, and how fast it's growing. You know, and to young people, it's just the most normal thing. But for 6,000 years of human history, recorded history, there was no chance of this, no thought of this development. So the fact it's happening right now at the same time that the events and trends that we've covered in the earlier 10 sessions, they're all happening on a global level at the same time in the same generation. What meaneth thou this? There's a storyline that's unfolding that's bigger than our money struggles or our money breakthroughs. We might have breakthroughs, or our impact or lack of impact, our popularity or our lack of popularity. There's a bigger storyline than all of that, because the enemy wants us stuck again in that bubble of our own struggles where we're not a part of the big narrative of what Jesus the King is leading his church in right now.